What happens when the person who could set you free is the same one who imprisoned you? Stay until the very end because this isn't simply a romance tale. It's an exploration of decisions, sacrifice, and a soul learning to believe again. If stories like this resonate with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let's dive in. They claim every bride recalls the fragrance of her wedding day. Some remember roses or lavender, perhaps the sweet aroma of cake icing or bubbly champagne. I recall cedar and aged timber, crisp, parched, almost harsh, as though the church walls were holding their breath alongside me. I stood there gripping a bouquet of cream-colored roses I hadn't selected, my knuckles white against the silk ribbon. The chapel, nestled on the remotest corner of upstate New York, was dimly illuminated by vintage wall lights. Dust particles danced through the air like miniature spirits beneath the wavering light dot. My heart raced, not with joy, but with the type of fear that settles deep in your core. There was no melody, no joy, no relatives occupying the benches, just myself and him. Dominic Hayes. He stood imposing at the altar, silhouetted by the gentle radiance of the colored glass window, yet he could have been a sculpture. His expression was unreadable, etched in. Frigid stone, defined jawline, wide shoulders, black suit immaculately pressed. He refused to glance at me, not even briefly, as if I were invisible. A commodity, a deal concluded in QUIETUDE. My lips quivered as I attempted to breathe. My fingers fidgeted anxiously with the silver band on my other hand, the sole item that truly felt mine. It was ancient, weathered, formed like a delicate vine coiling around itself. My mother's band. She used to wear it while baking bread on Sunday mornings, humming gently in the kitchen as the fragrance of cinnamon and vanilla permeated our small home. I would observe her hands working the dough, firm and confident, as if they held all the strength I hadn't learned to possess. Now those hands were absent. She was absent, and here I was, standing in a gown that felt more like a prison than silk. The priest's voice resonated, muffled and remote. "Do you, Lila Guan, take Dominic Hayes?" My throat constricted. I glanced sideways, half anticipating seeing my father, feeling the comfort of his steady presence giving me courage. But he wasn't present. He hadn't dared attend. The shame was too overwhelming for him to endure, I assumed. Or perhaps he couldn't confront what he'd done, presenting me as payment for the debts he couldn't settle. I swallowed deeply. My vision clouded as I battled the burning behind my eyes. My mother would have instructed me to keep my head raised, to remember my identity. Honor is what you select when nobody's observing, she used to say. But Dominic, he was observing now. Or perhaps he wasn't. His stare remained focused on the ground, as if the mere sight of me might repel him. I heard the priest clear his throat once more. "I do," I murmured, barely breathing the words. A single exhale, a single surrender, and just like that, it was finished. No kiss, no celebration, just the empty sound of the priest's final blessing echoing through the vacant chapel. I dared to look up, searching his face for something, anything. But Dominic turned away before I could discover it. He didn't extend his arm. He didn't even acknowledge my eyes. And yet I followed him. What other option did I have? The sleek black vehicle waited outside, engine purring softly in the sharp night air. I climbed in without speaking, the weight of my dress pooling around my legs like shackles. Dominic slid in beside me, silent as always, gazing out the window as the driver departed from the chapel, leaving my life, my history in the rear view. Mirror. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, blinking rapidly to prevent the tears from falling. My hand slipped into the pocket of my dress, fingers wrapping around a small folded paper. My heart squeezed as I carefully unfolded it. Smoothing the creases like a delicate treasure dot, it was her handwriting, graceful, steady, so achingly familiar. If you ever find yourself standing at the crossroads where every path seems like a trap, let love be the chance you take, Leia, because sometimes love starts where fear resides. I bit my lip firmly, suppressing a sob. Love, what a bitter word. Tonight, I refolded the letter, pressing it against my chest, and leaned back in the seat. Dominic shifted slightly, his hand forming a fist on his knee. For the briefest instant, I thought I heard him sigh, a sound that almost suggested regret. Almost. I didn't dare turn to see. The aircraft was waiting when we reached the private landing strip. A sleek silver jet stood beneath the floodlights, engines already humming like it had been anticipating this moment far longer than I had. Dominic stepped out first, offering no backward glance as I followed on shaking legs. The cabin smelled of leather and coffee, cool and clinical. I sank into the seat by the window, clutching my mother's letter so firmly my knuckles ached. He sat opposite me, silent, cold, impossible to read. I wanted to shout, to demand explanations, to plead with him to tell me what lay ahead. But the words knotted in my throat, too delicate to break free. As the engines roared to life and the plane lifted into the darkness. I pressed my forehead to the window once more. Below, the city lights dissolved into nothing but shadows. And I knew beyond doubt that whatever awaited on the other side of this flight, there would be no escape. I don't recall drifting off, but when I opened my eyes, the world outside the window had transformed from black to silver. Moonlight spilled across the clouds like ripples on calm water. For a moment, I believed we were still somewhere above the city. Then I saw it. An island, small, remote, consumed by darkness, except for a single row of glowing lights tracing the coastline. Like a trail of tiny lanterns, my breath caught as I leaned closer to the window, my heart pounding louder with every inch the plane descended. He hadn't told me our destination. He hadn't told me anything. I glanced at Dominic across the cabin. He was still there, sitting as motionless as he had hours ago, staring into emptiness. His jacket was unbuttoned now, his tie slightly loosened, but the tension in his jaw hadn't relaxed. Not once did the tires touch the ground with a gentle thud, and the engines began to wind down. A shiver ran through me as I sat frozen, gripping the armrest, waiting for him to speak. He did, single quotes T. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and without a word gestured for me to follow. I did. The night air struck me like a barrier when I stepped off the plane. It smelled of salt and pine, sharp and clean. A black SUV waited at the edge of the narrow runway. Dominic climbed in first, leaving the door open behind him. I hesitated, glancing back toward the jet, tempted to run, to ask the pilot to take me anywhere else. But the crew had already vanished into the shadows like they knew better than to interfere. I climbed in. The driver pulled away, the tires grinding over gravel as we wound down a narrow road bordered by towering pines. I pressed my hand to the window, searching for signs of life, houses, people, anything, but there was nothing. Just trees. Endless silent trees. We rounded a curve, and that's when I saw it. The house. No, not a house. A fortress. It rose at the edge of a cliff, walls of glass and stone gleaming under the moonlight. Massive windows stretched from floor to ceiling, reflecting the ocean below like a black mirror. Every light inside glowed warm and golden, but somehow it still felt cold, untouchable. Like him, the SUV stopped at the front steps. Dominic stepped out first. He didn't look back to check if I was following, but I did. I trailed behind him like a shadow as he pushed open the heavy double doors, revealing an interior so pristine it barely looked inhabited. Everything was white and silver, clean lines and sharp edges. Not a single thing felt soft. Not a single thing felt like home. Dominic stopped in the center of the foyer, his back to me. He ran a hand through his hair, his shoulders rising and falling with a slow, almost reluctant breath. "Your room is upstairs," he said at last, his voice low, distant. "Second door on the left." That was it. No welcome, no explanation, just directions. Stood frozen, clutching my hands to my chest. "Is this where I'm supposed to thank you for destroying my life?" I whispered, surprising myself with the edge in my voice. He stiffened, but didn't turn around. "I never asked for your gratitude," he replied quietly, "and I don't need it." Tears burned the backs of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Without another word, I turned toward the staircase and climbed slowly, each step heavier than the last. I reached the second door, pushing it open with trembling hands. The room was beautiful, luxurious, a bed that looked softer than clouds, white curtains fluttering in the ocean breeze, a view of the endless dark sea stretching beyond the glass walls. But it wasn't the beauty that made me stop breathing. It was the painting, propped against the far wall, half covered by a dusty sheet. It was a large canvas. My throat tightened as I pulled the cloth away. It was me, sitting by the window of my father's workshop, sketching designs in my little notebook. The sunlight in the painting caught the curve of my cheek, the loose strands of hair falling over my face. I staggered back, clutching the edge of the bed for balance. I had never seen this before. How? When? Who had painted this? My mind spun, searching for answers that wouldn't come. I turned toward the door, ready to march downstairs and demand an explanation. But something else caught my eye, ominous sound. Sitting alone beneath the soft lamplight was a small porcelain box. I reached for it with trembling fingers. Lifting the lid, inside was a key, and beneath it, a note written in the same familiar script that had haunted me since the plane. "Sometimes love starts where fear resides." I pressed the note to my chest, swallowing. The lump in my throat. My mother's words felt closer now than ever before, but love didn't live here. Not on this island. Not in this glass fortress. Only fear. And yet I couldn't stop my hand from curling around the key. I didn't know what it unlocked. I didn't know if I wanted to find out, but deep down, I knew I would. I don't know what compelled me to take the key. Maybe it was desperation, or the tiny voice inside me, my mother's voice whispering to keep searching for a way out. Whatever it was, I slipped the porcelain box back into the drawer and closed it with shaking hands. For 2 days, I didn't see him. Meals arrived silently. Outside my door, delivered by a housekeeper named Mary, an older woman with kind eyes that didn't quite meet mine. She never spoke more than a quiet good morning or good evening. And when I asked her anything about Dominic, she only gave me the faintest of smiles, the kind that concealed more than it revealed. I wandered the house alone, pressing my palm to the cold glass walls, staring out at the ocean that stretched like a living, breathing cage around me. The water was endless, dark and violent, mocking the hope I tried to hold on to. I tried every door, every hallway, every locked cabinet until one night I found it. The door at the far end of the east wing wasn't locked. My fingers trembled as I turned the handle and pushed it open. The air inside smelled faintly of oil paint and cedar. A studio. My breath caught as I stepped inside. Canvas after canvas lined the walls. All of me. Sketches of my hands sewing delicate lace. Paintings of me standing behind the counter of my father's shop. Even one of me in the park on a Sunday morning, feeding birds I couldn't remember ever noticing. I sank to my knees, my heart pounding. He had been watching me long before this marriage. Long before the deal. I pressed my hands to my mouth to keep from crying out. What kind of man studies someone like this and says nothing? The sound of rain pulled me back to my feet. I rushed to the window. A storm was brewing over the sea, lightning cracking across the sky. thunder rolling so deep it rattled the glass. And there, at the far edge of the property, I saw it. A small dock, a boat swaying in the waves. My heart leaped. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just ran down the stairs, through the hallways, out the back door. Into the wind and rain. My bare feet slipped on the wet stone as I raced toward the shore. I could barely see through the sheets of water, but I knew the path now, and my feet carried me faster than my mind could catch up. The boat rocked violently, tethered to the dock by a single rope. I lunged for it and froze. He was there, Dominic, standing at the edge of the dock, soaked to the bone, hair plastered to his forehead, breathing hard like he'd been running too. For a moment, neither of us moved. The rain pounded between us like a wall. The wind howled, stealing the breath from my lungs. Then he fell to his knees, right there on the slick, rain-soaked wood. I stared, unable to process what I was seeing. The man who hadn't shown me a single crack in his armor since the day I met him had dropped to his knees, his hands curled into fists at his sides, his chest heaving like every breath hurt. "Lila," he choked out, his voice raw, shredded by something I couldn't name. I shook my head, tears mixing with the rain. "You can't keep me here." His eyes squeezed shut. "I know." My throat burned. "Then why?" He looked up at me. And for the first time, he didn't look cold. He didn't look cruel. He looked broken because I didn't know how else to keep you. I swallowed hard, every word hitting me like a tidal wave. "I've watched you," he whispered, his voice cracking. "For years, long before your father's death, long before this deal. I saw you. Your hands, your smile, the way you looked at the world like it still had something good left in it." His shoulders trembled, and I hated myself for wanting it, for wanting you. The wind howled louder, and I felt my knees begin to shake. "I thought if I made you mine this way, if I controlled it, I could stop needing you," he rasped. "But all I've done is ruin the only thing I ever wanted to protect." I took a step back, my heart splintering with every word. "I never wanted to hurt you, Leia," he whispered, the rain streaking down his face like tears. "I just didn't know how to let you go." My hands curled at my sides. "Let me go now," I whispered, my voice trembling but firm. He nodded slowly, swallowing hard like the words tasted like poison. "I will." I took another step back, turning toward the boat, every inch of me shaking with disbelief. But before I could climb in, I glanced back one last time. He hadn't moved. He was still on his knees, head bowed, as if surrendering to something neither of us could name. I turned away, but the image burned into my heart like a scar. I didn't leave. I wanted to. I told myself I would, but long after the storm had passed, I found myself standing on the balcony outside my room, barefoot and frozen, staring at the place where he had knelt in the rain. He hadn't followed me back. He hadn't come to claim me. And somehow that was what scared me most. I should have taken the boat. I should have escaped while I had the chance. But the truth was, I didn't want to run anymore. Not because I trusted him. Not because I forgave him. But because something inside me needed to understand the man who had looked so completely undone on that dock. I slipped back into the house just before dawn, the air thick with the scent of sea salt and damp stone. My skin prickled with cold as I wrapped my arms around myself and crept upstairs, heart pounding as I passed the darkened hallway leading to his wing. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Not yet. Hours passed, maybe more. I couldn't tell anymore. All I knew was the ache in my chest, the war raging inside me. And then I heard it, the softest knock at my door. My breath hitched. I sat up slowly, heart racing. I knew who it was before I even reached for the handle. My fingers trembled as I turned it, the door creaking softly open. Dominic stood there barefoot, his shirt wrinkled, hair tousled like he hadn't slept all night. Didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The silence between us was heavier than anything words could carry. Slowly, cautiously, he stepped inside, leaving the door half open behind him. His jaw flexed like he was fighting himself. His hands curled into fists at his sides. But his eyes, they burned, not with anger, not with possession, but with something far more dangerous, need. He took a step closer, then stopped as if waiting for permission. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think, but I didn't move. I couldn't. He let out a slow, ragged breath, his voice breaking the silence like a confession. I never wanted to own you. I just didn't know how to let you go. Tears welled in my eyes before I could stop them. He took another step, reaching into his pocket. My breath caught when I saw it, the key. The very one I had hidden away, thinking. He hadn't noticed. He held it out to me, his hand trembling. I knew you found it, he whispered. I left it for you. I stared at him, my throat tight. I thought if I gave you a way out, you'd take it. I thought it would make it easier to let you go. I swallowed hard, my vision blurring. And when you didn't, he added, his voice barely audible, I realized I don't want you to go. Not now, not ever. The dam inside me broke. I reached for the key, but instead of taking it, my fingers wrapped around his hand, holding it tightly against my chest. He flinched like the touch burned him. Why me? I choked out. Of all the women in your world, why me? His jaw clenched. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. Because you never belonged to that world, he whispered, and I never belonged to anything until I saw you. My breath trembled as I let go of his hand, stepping back just enough to feel the distance between us stretch like a thread about to snap. And then, without thinking, I whispered the words that had haunted me since the moment I saw him on that. Doc, do I belong to you now? The question hung in the air like a dare. Dominic closed the distance in a single step, cupping my face with both hands, his thumbs trembling as they brushed away the tears I didn't realize had fallen. No, he breathed, his voice breaking. Not because of a deal, not because of fear. His forehead pressed gently against mine. But because you already took my heart. My breath hitched, my body trembling beneath his touch. He didn't kiss me. He didn't pull me closer. He just stood there holding me like I was something precious, something fragile, something he wasn't sure he deserved to keep. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was locked in a gilded cage. I felt safe, warm, real. His hands dropped. To his sides, his breath ragged. I'll leave if you want me to, he whispered. I swallowed hard, closing my eyes. No, I breathed. Stay. He let out a shaky breath, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. I don't deserve you, Leia. I opened my eyes, meeting his gaze. Maybe, I whispered. But I think I want to find out who you really are. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. And in that moment, I almost believed that morning on the island was unlike any morning I had ever known. There were no city sounds, no hum of traffic or distant voices, only the rhythmic crash of waves against the cliffs and the soft rustle of wind slipping through the pines. I stood at the balcony's edge, clutching the shawl Mary had left for me. Sometime in the early hours, the ocean stretched endlessly before me, wild and unyielding, as if it carried every secret I had yet to face. I hadn't slept. Neither had he. Dominic had stayed in the doorway until I drifted to sleep, sitting on the floor, his back against the frame, as if daring himself not to cross it. When I'd woken, he was gone, but something felt different now. The weight between us had shifted. I heard his footsteps before I turned to look. Slow, steady, careful. He stood in the doorway again, only this time, his hands weren't clenched into fists. They hung loosely at his sides like a man who had nothing left to hide. "Come with me," he said softly. I didn't hesitate. We walked through the halls in silence, my bare feet brushing against the cool stone floor as I followed him deeper into the heart of the house. He didn't rush. He didn't speak. He just walked ahead like a man carrying something fragile. The stairs creaked softly beneath our weight as we climbed to the highest point of the house, a narrow spiral staircase that opened onto a small glass room perched like a lighthouse at the very top. My breath caught when I saw the view. The island stretched out below us, wild and untamed. From here, I could see the winding trails through the trees, the rocky cliffs that guarded the shore, and the endless ocean that wrapped it all in a cocoon of blue and gray. Dominic moved to stand beside me, his hands sliding into his pockets. "I bought this island 5 years ago," he began, his voice almost too quiet to hear. "Not as an investment, not for development, but for you." I turned to face him, my breath catching. He kept his eyes on the horizon. "I saw you long before your father's debt, long before the marriage contract," he continued. "You used to sit by the window of that little shop in the city, sketching dresses in a worn notebook. I don't even think you knew anyone was watching." My throat tightened. "I came back every week," he admitted, a faint smile ghosting his lips. "Not to buy anything, just to see you. To remind myself that not everything in my world had to be cold." I swallowed hard, my fingers curling around the edge of the railing. "When your father approached me about the debt, I knew it was wrong," he whispered. "But all I could think was, maybe this was my only chance to bring you here, to give you a place where you'd never have to look over your shoulder again." Tears stung my eyes, but I forced them back. "I thought if I kept you here, you'd be safe, even if you hated me for it." I turned away, pressing my palm to the glass, staring out at the island with new eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Why hide all of this?" He let out a breath, stepping closer until I could feel the heat of him at my back. "Because I didn't want you to think I was the monster everyone says I am," he whispered. "But the truth is, maybe I am." I turned slowly, meeting his gaze. "I don't know who you are," I whispered. "I don't know what any of this means." He nodded, his throat bobbing as he swallowed hard. "But I want to," I added softly. His eyes flickered like a man who'd been drowning for too long and had just found the surface. "I can show you," he whispered, "if you let me." I bit my lip, fighting the storm inside me. "Start by telling me the truth," I whispered. He nodded again, stepping back and gesturing toward the spiral staircase. "There's something you need to hear." We made our way back down, the silence between us heavy with something I couldn't name. He led me to the kitchen where Mary stood at the stove, her hands trembling slightly as she stirred a pot of tea. Turned when she heard us, her eyes softening. "Mary," Dominic said quietly, "tell her." Mary set the spoon down, drying her hands on her apron. She looked at me, then at Dominic, and nodded slowly. "I knew your mother," she said, her voice cracking. "With age. Long before she married your father." My breath hitched. "She worked for the Hayes family as a housekeeper. Dominic was just a boy when she left, but he never forgot her." I stared at her, my knees threatening to give way. "She used to sing to him." In the kitchen, Mary continued, tears pooling in her eyes. "She told him stories about honor, about love, the same way she must have told them to you." My chest tightened. Dominic's hand reached for mine, trembling as it hovered just inches away. "I didn't just find you by accident, Leia," he whispered. "I think I've been trying to find my way back to her through you for a very long time." Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. And in that moment, I didn't run. I reached for his hand. Lacing my fingers with his for the first time, we stayed in the kitchen long after the tea had gone cold. Neither of us spoke again, Not really. Dominic sat across from me, fingers tangled loosely with mine on the table between us, like he was afraid to let go in case I vanished if he blinked. Mary, bless her heart, had quietly left us alone, slipping out with a knowing glance that carried both sorrow and hope. But as the morning stretched into afternoon, the weight of it all pressed heavier on my chest. I couldn't stay here, not like this. Not when I still didn't know if what we had, what this was, could ever be real. Love wasn't something you trapped in a cage. No matter how pretty the view or how soft the hands that held it. I stood, my chair scraping softly against the floor. Dominic's hand tightened around mine instinctively, his breath catching. Lila. I shook my head gently. I need air. He didn't stop me, didn't follow. I walked back to the shoreline alone, the waves crashing softly against the rocks, the sea stretching endlessly toward the horizon. I sat on the edge of the dock where he had knelt days before, hugging my knees to my chest. The wind whispered through my hair, but it carried no answers. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the sun to begin dipping low in the sky, painting the water in shades of gold and violet. Long enough to hear the distant hum of an engine roaring to life near the airstrip. I turned sharply. The plane I stood, heart pounding. He was letting me go. I ran, feet pounding against the wet earth, the salty air burning my lungs as I reached the edge of the property. There, parked by the small private runway, was the same silver jet that had brought me here. Its engines were humming softly, ready to leave. My breath hitched when I saw him. Dominic stood by the open cabin door, a small bag at his feet. His back was to me, shoulders tense, head bowed. He wasn't preparing to board. He was waiting. I took a shaky step closer, every inch of me trembling. That's when I heard it. His voice, rough and broken, carried through the headset clutched in his hand. Let her go, he whispered into the microphone. Even if it means losing myself. I pressed a hand to my mouth, a sob catching in my throat. He wasn't planning to leave. He was giving me the choice. He turned slightly like he could feel me there, his eyes locked on mine, pain etched into every line of his face. I shook my head, tears spilling freely now. I thought you said you'd never let me go, I choked out. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He took a step toward me, stopping just short of reaching my hand. I don't want to, he whispered, voice raw. But I can't keep you if it means breaking you. I swallowed hard, every part of me screaming to run to him, to let him wrap me in the arms I had spent so long resisting. But I couldn't, not yet. Not until I knew if this choice was truly mine. My hand slipped into my pocket, curling around the cold metal of my mother's ring. I turned it over and over in my palm, grounding myself in the memory of her voice. Let love be the risk you take. I looked back at the jet, the stairs waiting like open arms. Then at him, the man who had let down every wall, every shield, and was standing here, ready to lose everything because I asked him to. My heart cracked open as I closed the distance between us. Standing so close, I could feel the heat of his breath. You bought this island to keep me, I whispered. You let me believe I had no choice. He nodded, swallowing hard. But you just gave me the only thing I ever wanted. His throat bobbed. And what's that? I reached up, placing my palm over his heart, feeling the steady thrum beneath my fingers. A way out, I breathed, and the choice to stay. His breath caught. I took his hand, placing my mother's ring in his palm, curling his fingers around it. You told me once this island was always mine, I whispered. So let me come home to it on my own. Tears filled his eyes, his body trembling. You already have, he choked out. He cupped my face with shaking hands, his forehead pressing to mine. A breathless sob breaking between us. Stay with me, Leia. I close my eyes, tears slipping down my cheeks. I'm already here. His arms wrapped around me, holding me so tightly I could feel the pieces of us mending in the space between our hearts. And for the first time, I felt free. I don't remember how long we stood there, pressed together on that runway, both of us trembling as if the smallest breath might break. Whatever fragile thing had begun to take shape between us dot the jet's engines. Words softly in the background, a quiet reminder that I could still walk away, that the choice was still mine. But standing there in his arms, feeling the raw, unguarded beat of his heart against my cheek, I realized something I hadn't dared admit before. I didn't want to leave. Not because I had no way out, but because I had finally found the courage to stay. He loosened his grip just enough to look at me, his hands framing my face like I was something precious. His eyes, so often cold and unreadable, now shimmered with something far more dangerous than possession: hope. I meant what I said. Dominic whispered, his voice rough like gravel in his throat. You can still go. You don't owe me anything. I swallowed hard, my fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt, gripping it like an anchor. I know, I whispered back. I stepped away just enough to place the ring, my mother's ring, back into his palm. I closed his fingers around it, holding them there for a moment longer than I should have. Keep this, I whispered, not as payment, not as proof. He looked at me, breath held tight in his throat. But as a promise, I finished, my voice trembling, that whatever happens next, it's because I choose it. His breath hitched, his jaw tightening like he was trying to hold back the breaking. Layla, I reached up, brushing my fingers along his jaw, memorizing every sharp line, every rough edge. I choose you, I whispered, not the deal, not the island, you. His knees buckled like my words knocked the air clean out of him. I caught his shoulders as he sank to the ground in front of me, just like he had that night on the dock. But this time, he didn't fall apart. He reached for my hands, bringing them to his lips, pressing soft, shaking kisses to my knuckles. His voice cracked as he whispered, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you. I knelt with him, tears slipping silently down my cheeks. Maybe not, I whispered, but I don't think love waits for us to be worthy. I think it finds us in the mess, in the breaking. His forehead pressed to mine again, breathless and trembling. I've never known anything real, he whispered, not until you. We stayed there, two souls stitched back together by choices neither of us saw coming. I leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder, breathing.